I think Andy might be able to.
All right, we're good to go. All right.
Okay.
All right, picking up from where we were. So the problem is that with suicide being the second leading cause of death, for teens, usually from the age of 10 to 24, usually these people should pursue like seeing like a therapist or a support system, and they would sit down and have like a traditional safety plan created for them. And they come with a few drawbacks, those being that they're usually less convenient, paper-based, and less accessible because these sit-down sessions, when they create their safety plans, if they would have to go to these meetings frequently in order to update it, but usually that's not always the case. They really only meet it with therapists once or twice, and we needed something a bit more on demand. Also, they were paper-based. They can be a little bit more inconvenient. Whereas if we have a digital alternative, which is what this is that we will have the paper-based safety plan be like on a easily accessible mobile platform straight from anyone's phone. And as I mentioned, this is the solution where we now provide a method for accessing and modifying their own custom safety plans by providing helpful and encouraging feedback, being able to share their safety plans with their parents and therapists, and comfortable ways to express themselves. And it also provides easy access to crisis services. The need for version 2, we were given these two amazing applications, and for Senior Design 1 for 2 different platforms on iOS and Android. And our jobs were to improve on the existing app by adding new features such as app analytics, improving on the old features like the data visuals and the chat feature, and making the app production ready by fixing bugs.
Some of the technologies we've used include SwiftUI, which we've used for the iOS version we have, and in tandem, we use Xcode for its environment. Now, for the Android side, we use React Native for the framework, while in tandem, we use Visual Studio Code for its environment. For means of communication with our sponsors, we have weekly meetings using Skype, and we mainly just updated them on the development of the app, while within our team, we use the Discord. AWS has resources that serve as the main backbone of the entire project.
Okay, so for our bug and feature tracking, we needed a way to efficiently track all progress across all team members and tasks. So we decided on GitHub issues. And as you can see from the screenshot, you can add issues into 4 different columns, either to do, in progress, for review, or done. Now this makes it convenient. This makes it convenient to see how far along someone is on their bug. And you can also attach certain tags to issues, such as a bug, feature, or required feature. And you can also split them across iOS and Android, so they're 2 separate ones or all together. So this makes it less confusing, so there's no conflict between working on bugs.
Now, for our architecture, we use Amplifier for our mobile backend. It connects to Cognito, which handles our user authentication and identity roles through IM, which allows distinct access amongst teams, parents, and therapists. It also connects to AppSync, which is our API. It's a GraphQL. It provides a GraphQL interface that handles integration with all the other AWS resources. Our database is an SQL service called Aurora, which mostly allows for auto scaling and global replication. This is good for production of the app. It also has endpoints that takes in GraphQL requests from AppSync. Lastly, for administration, we have the Elastic Cloud, or EC2. It it contains within it Aurora, which is connected to the UCF IT virtual private cloud. Through all of that, we connect with our personal computer through a secure shell connection.
So are your instances on the ITVPC or are your instances all on AWS proper?
The UCF research IT. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, here you can see the user interface. There are 3 different users for the app: the teens, therapists, and parents, with teens having the most features down here at the bottom, most tabs. They have the home, support, journal, messages, and settings. Here you can see the home screen. Depending on the time of day, they're greeted with either good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. Here in this blue button is where they will complete their daily check-in. They will go through the major life events, daily stressors or coping strategies that they used that day. They can also write a journal entry from that, from the daily check-in, as well as sending a message to their parents. And then at the end, they read their link to life to reaffirm them that everything's going to be okay. And then they have completed the daily check-in. Here's the I Need Help screen. This will pull up a menu that lets them have a quick link to 911 to call 911. They can also read their link to life from there. And they can also get potential coping ideas to make themselves feel better. These are the same buttons here. To get support, it'll take you to the support screen, and the coping ideas will show you coping ideas to make you feel better. Once you do your daily check-in, you can go to any of these 3 buttons. If you press on the major life event screen, it'll take you to the graph screens that'll show you your progress from the bar charts and line charts, showing you the frequency of the items that you selected, as well as the amount over time over the past week or however long that you selected. The second screenshot that you can see here is the safety plan screen. From this screen, they can edit, or not on this screen, but when they select on any of these items, it'll take them to the screen with the items that they selected in their safety plan, and from there they can delete any items that they no longer want in their safety plan. And the safe environment will show them the safe environment plan that they wrote for themselves during the sign-up process. And the last screen that you can see here is the messages screen that is between the parent and the teen. Here you send messages to your parent. You have the option to delete the conversation at the top. And here's the from check-in button that gets linked with the check-in that they created during their check-in. It'll link the items, all the items that they selected during that check-in, so that the parent can see what items the teen experienced, what events, and daily stressors, and coping strategies. Oh, I was also going to mention that the design of the app is very consistent throughout the Android and iOS versions. Unfortunately, there are some differences due to the limitations of using 2 different frameworks, such as the progress graphs and other small differences. So these were our main goals for this project. The first being app analytics. This was very important to our sponsors because they wanted to know how long and how often users using their app. This will help them understand more what the app needs and what they can improve on. The next thing that we needed to do was improve the data visuals. The data visuals were very different for both iOS and Android, as well as they were good, but they weren't very easy to read or understand what was going on. And because we're focused on youths, we wanted to make it as easy to understand for everyone as possible. Another feature we wanted to add was intelligent notifications. We wanted to improve on the notifications that were already in the app. They were previously time-based notifications that they would set up either in their settings or during the sign-up process, but we wanted to make them more personalized to the team by checking when the last time they checked in was and how often they checked in, things like that. Another goal was to improve the chat feature. There were many cosmetic issues in the chat feature, such as like the keyboard, auto scrolling, and things like that we needed to fix. And finally, making the app production ready by resolving any of the previous bugs from the old team or any new bugs that we added while we were working on the project.
Okay, so me and Daniel are the iOS team. He was more responsible for the chat feature and data visuals, while I was working on notifications and general bug fixing. So here's a small sample of some of the main critical bugs that we encountered. Now, the first 2, account creation and account confirmation, have to do with the sign-up process. Now, these would cause corrupted accounts. And once you have a corrupted account, it's impossible to get back unless you delete it from the back end and remake it. These next two custom metrics now added to safety plan and non-functioning delete buttons have to do with some of the main functionality of the app and some of the main business model that the app runs on, being able to edit, customize your safety plan. So those are very important to fix as well. Infinite loading. Now that was some occasional glitches that happen sometimes that had to do with some of the back end and the front end logic. It was just a missed edge case. Now chat issues and consistency across iOS and Android are mainly cosmetic. However, there was a decent amount to fix throughout the logic as well. So now
I'll ask others.
okay. So now I'll go into a couple of the issues in more detail. So with the account creation issues, the main underlying issue was uncut edge cases, such as the user losing Wi-Fi connection, quitting the app, mid sign up and things like that. And that was all before they would confirm their email. And this would put the app into a signed in state. However, all their data wasn't properly populated on the back end. Now this would cause some default metrics and information to not be populated on their account. And though that missing information was crucial for normal usage of the app. Now, we also discovered another issue where the server would shut down when it was idle. However, this would cause it to reboot whenever it was first accessed. So if you're creating an account while you're if you're creating an account while it's rebooting, it would be non-responsive and lead to another corrupted account. So to fix this issue, we redesigned the whole setup process and flow of when data is actually sent to the backend and make sure it has all the data it needs before the account is actually created. We also caught all the edge cases to prevent possible interruption. Now the custom metrics fault, like I said, being one of the core functionalities of the app, whenever a team was completing a check-in, they would be able to add custom metrics such as major life events, coping strategies, and stressors. They could just add their own, make whatever name they wanted. However, at the end of the check-in, you can see the screen right here. It should be populated with the new items that they added, however it wasn't. So to get around this, we've constructed the appropriate data structs to carry the data to the backend and populate their safety plan properly. So now moving on to some of the features that we accomplished. First was intelligent notifications. So the old notifications were all static. It was the same thing. It was remember to check in today. However, now we use the user's data based on what time they usually check in, how long ago they checked in, to customize notifications and the goal of this was to engage the app engage the user into the app more and kind of give more of a personal feel. So yeah. Another one that we did was Face ID. Now this is an alternative to their passcode. So whenever they opt into the passcode, they have an option to add their Face ID. Now we used Apple's API for this, which accesses their biometrics within their phone. So it's all done through Apple and it's non-invasive to the user. And obviously it asks have their biometrics available. And the Face ID prompt only shows up whenever they launch the app or whenever they first sign into it. So over here is a couple of screenshots of the old data visuals. Now, as you can see, it's almost visually pleasing. However, there's some inconsistencies such as no labels, no most common item. Also, whenever there was no data to display, it would all be empty and it wouldn't display any sort of message or anything like that. It was basically an uncut edge case. So also, it was pretty inconsistent with Android and iOS. So we revised it into a joint design. So here's a new data visual. Now you can see there's the most common item up here, right here. And also there's labels as well as the emblem and the color associated with the graph. Now, these are also interactive. So whenever you hover over each bar, it'll show the label and the individual account. And now you can look over here to see the line graph, which shows progress over time. Also, you can adjust the last 30 days, last 7 days to look at that type of data from that time frame. Excuse me. Okay, so here's some screenshots of the old chat feature. Now the most notable one is when you first click on a conversation, it would load at the very top of the screen like so, instead of scrolling down to the very bottom of the text. That's a pretty big problem. Also, whenever you clicked on the keyboard to type, it wouldn't push up the messages either. So a lot of these are cosmetic. Also, the delete button wouldn't work, so you just had the conversation forever and ever. So here's our new chat feature. Now, whenever you click on the conversation, this is how it loads. Now, also, whenever you click on the keyboard, pushes everything up, and the delete function, the delete function is now fully functional. So one of the last things that I would like to mention that we updated on iOS was the documentation. Now, in hopes of this, we wanted to make the handoff process very easy.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we wanted to make the handoff very, very easy for the next developers, whoever works on the project. So we kept a very good testing log, which is kind of stored through GitHub issues. Whenever we're working on an issue, we would log any new issues that we found, as well as testing accounts, so their login and the password. Another thing that we updated was the GitHub README, which is very important because now there's instructions to set up your dev environment, as well as normal workflow, such as creating a new branch and other code guidelines that we like to follow in order to keep the repo clean and easy to read.
Okay, so James and I worked on the SafeLINC Android version. I worked on the front end and the chat feature, while James worked on the data visuals and the notifications. Brandon.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so here are some of the improvements that we focused on to make the Android version of the app better. We first started with improving the app stability. The app was constantly crashing throughout normal use when we first got the app. It made it very hard to try to find issues and fix issues that we wanted to work on. So that was the first thing that we tackled. And James was able to fix that by updating the old packages that were deprecated, and it made the experience a lot more comfortable. The next thing that we wanted to fix was visual inconsistencies with the iOS version and the Figmas that we were given. The Android version of the app diverted in many ways due to it being on React Native. And I just tried my best to make it as close as possible to the Figmas in the iOS. Another thing we wanted to improve was the app's overall responsiveness. There are many queries that need to be made to the database where the loading screen is shown. And it made the app feel very slow due to the design of the loading screens. So that's one thing that I wanted to really focus on. Another issue were blank screens all throughout the app when data is being called and there's no data to display. It wouldn't provide the user with context, and they didn't really know what they were waiting for, or if they were waiting for anything still. And finally, some missing functions that existed on the iOS app but that didn't exist on the Android app, such as delete from check-in and the option to change the time spent for the graph screens. Okay, starting with the visual inconsistencies, you can see here is a screenshot on the left of what the safety plan screen used to look like. They would have all their events, stressors, and strategies all in one place, and they would swipe to delete them and then select done. Well, now it's just like on iOS. It's all separated by whether it's a major life event, daily stress, or coping strategy, and they can see their safe environment plan as well. And on these screens, they'll see the individual items that they selected. That way, it's less like overwhelming to see all of the items that you have. You see the individual things that you want to see, and you can edit them from there. Other screens that were different were the parent home views, as well as there was missing things such as the confirm password on the sign up process didn't exist on the Android side, and other various style differences throughout the entirety of the app. Another thing I wanted to fix was the app's responsiveness. Like I said before, this is what the app used to look like when screens were being loaded in. So you change tabs and it would be loading, and it would blend in together because all of the screens that were loading looked like this, and it just made the app feel like it was always loading. So I fixed this just by implementing static information such as the titles of the check-ins to make things feel a lot better and let the user know what they're waiting for. I did that for all of the screens that load information, as well as screens that were loading but didn't make any queries to the database. They were loading for no reason, so I removed those as well. I also wanted to fix the blank screens. As I said, there were many screens that show information that wouldn't have any message when there was no data to display, such as the parent and therapist home checked-in screens, their progress screens, the Teams tab, and the Teams Journals tab. This is what it used to look like when they finished loading. There was no message at all. There would just be no data. And this would occur on all the checked-in screens and progress screens, as I said before. Well, now for all of these screens, it'll say whether, like for this one, for example, is for the people who have checked in yesterday for a therapist, it'll say no clients have checked in yesterday. And if it's for the week, no clients checked in this week. Or for all that have checked in the week, it'll say all clients have checked in that week. Otherwise, it'll show the people who have checked in yesterday or people who have checked in that week.
Just gonna interject very quick question here. Those were fixed symmetrically, both on iOS and Android.
Yep.
Yep, nice. Okay.
So here are the old data visuals for Android. As you can see, they get the job done, they get the point across, but they're not very aesthetically pleasing. You can see like on the bar charts, the text is off-centered. The most common feature kind of looks out of place with the styling of the page. And the amount over time line plot is a little difficult to interpret. It gives it by the week instead of the specific days. So here are our new data visuals. As you can see, we now have a time span button like iOS, where you can select between 7 and 14 days. We also, for the bar chart, we made the most common feature fit in more with the styling of the page. And it also shows the quantity on top of the respective bars. So there's no need for a grid. It's very quick to interpret the data. And we also revamped the amount over time line plot. So it's more aesthetically pleasing and it's easier to interpret. Like you can see from today to whatever the time span is set to, it shows you each individual day. So say you miss a check-in one day, well, it's gonna show 0 for that day. But you can keep track of which days you checked in and how much each event stressor or coping strategy pops up.
It's also very consistent with the iOS now.
So with the implementation of intelligent notifications, we've personalized it more towards the teen user. So like if somebody forgets to check in for a day, it'll give them a quick message like, how are you doing? Remember to complete your daily check-in. Or if they have like a ton of stressors in their check-ins and they haven't checked in for a while, it might give them a more calming, lighthearted message. For example, if somebody didn't check in the day before, I believe it says, we missed you yesterday. Hope you were doing something fun. Remember to complete your daily check-in. Another example is consistency is key. Build good habits by completing your daily check-ins. So there's an assortment of messages aimed towards encouraging the teen to get engaged in the application and let their therapist or parent know how they're doing.
So as you can see here, this is the old chat feature. It worked very well when we first got it, but there were a few cosmetic bugs. As you can see here, the chat box used to appear at the very top and would get pushed down with every new message that was sent. So it would be here, and then a new message was sent, and boop, boop, and keep popping down until eventually it was hidden, as you can see here. And you'd have to scroll down to send a message, and then when you send a message, it would take you right back up to the top of the screen. You have to scroll back down to send a new message. This is what it would also take you to the top of the screen when you selected the conversation rather than to the latest message. When the keyboard would come up, it would hide messages behind it. Newly sent messages would also get hidden behind the keyboard. The send button wasn't working until the keyboard was closed. Messages from iOS were interpreted incorrectly from the database and would appear above all messages for some reason. And there was no live chat update in the Android version of the app. So it would a newly received message from iOS or another app wouldn't appear until they refresh the screen. The user had to manually refresh in order to see any new messages. Okay, so this is what the chat feature looks like now. I forgot to mention that there was no delete and from check-in, but now we implemented the delete as well as the from check-in button. Here you can see what the from check-in button takes you to. It'll show you the check-in that was linked to that message, shows you all the major life events and daily stressors, as well as coping strategies that the team selected during that check-in. When the chat box comes up, now messages get sent up and they don't get hidden when you send a message. Newly sent messages or newly received messages will automatically appear on the screen. The send button was fixed, so now the keyboard doesn't have to be closed first. And the text button is now static at the bottom of the screen, as I said before.
So for the Android documentation, one of the biggest roadblocks we first faced was getting our environment set up. So recently I went back and I revised the GitHub setup instructions. Prior to my update, there were like 5 initial setup steps, while realistically there's like 20. They assumed that a ton of API and tools were already installed on the programmer's PC. So I felt it was very important to update that in order to begin a seamless transition to another team of developers in the future. We also made significant revisions to the Android portions of the documentation, so everything is updated and consistent with the current version of the app.
All right, my name is Daniel once again. And this is Marcus. We worked mainly also on the back end. Marcus helped out with the AW Amplify specific things and a lot of the migrational changes that we'll discuss now. So here are some of the biggest backend improvements that we did during our project. So the idea behind the initial backend design was really sound. It was really it had a lot of considerations built around it. However, there were just a few things that needed to be kind of like touched up. And once we looked into it, we realized that it actually would require a very large backend rework. So we got right into that as soon as we realized these intricacies. And the first one was that we had 2 Amplify projects per platform, one for iOS and one for Android, and that brought a myriad of problems. So we unified them and brought them into a single Amplify project rather than 2 separate ones, and we'll discuss the benefits in the next few slides. The next thing is we had a new user pool. So I know that we mentioned that a lot of the old accounts can sometimes become corrupted. All those accounts we ended up getting rid of by creating a new user pool that were missing data. And now we've also updated the API queries, mutations, and resolvers found within AppSync, one of AWS's API services, because we had to merge both ends of the project. So all API references had to be consistent on both platforms. And we also improved scalability for the actual database itself, because we noticed that it still was made for scaling seamlessly. However, whenever we realized that it would take like they would go idle and it would receive a request to start back up, that would take about 5 minutes, and that could also just either reflect unresponsiveness to the user and other sort of things, and like corrupted accounts. So we decided to upgrade the version of RDS Aurora that we used for our database, which also increased the scalability by, instead of spinning up in a few seconds, a few minutes, my bad, it'll spin up under a second. All that we still were able to decrease costs with those improvements because there were a lot of unused resources that were incurring unnecessary costs, which we'll get into further. So the Amplify mobile backend that I mentioned, we recreated both of them to be into a single project. And because they were separate initially, we weren't able to implement a lot of the features because they weren't concise with each other, and there was just a bunch of confusion as to what came from what, where something was, where like the path from the front end user was to the very end. Just confused a bunch of it confused us a lot. So with the single project, now we have better modularization and integration of AWS services for any future capabilities. To list a few: AI, chatbots, serverless functions, IoT, many more. The limit is really what Amazon has to provide. It also allowed us to implement AWS pinpoint analytics to serve as one example. We went straight into implementing Amazon's service for that, and we used it for our backend to track user events that use our app. And lastly, it also eliminated the need to have 2 instances of every AWS services for both platforms. That means we would have 2 Amplify projects, we would have 2 AppSync projects. Some other ones were custom routed and they didn't have 2, but it added a lot of confusion as to like where you would instantiate one instance from. Having them all in one location just made them all kind of seamlessly work together. So for the app analytics that track app usage across both Android and iOS, the usage of this will be for researchers to track during user studies to gain insight on how often a specific user is completing events such as check-ins, messaging, and opening the app. This was implemented using the AWS Service Pinpoint, and it allows for customization and usage of user-defined events, the most specific ones, to understand helpful data. And it also provides on the front end side of things access to pull this data from, which hopefully in the future, if somebody would like to create like an auditor account, they could see all this data from that. The AppSync API, so like I mentioned, they were split into 2 separate projects, but with the merging, now we have merged the existing endpoints into a single project. And by doing so, it effectively removed overhead by cutting the resolver code, the API code that is essentially processing all of those requests, by half exactly. It also created a better developer experience for debugging at the API level, because they're on one location for both platforms, we kind of have to just look at one source of truth instead of 2. Also, we made GraphQL queries, mutations, and subscriptions more concise and consistent for both iOS and Android, so they reference the exact same things. Marcus helped a lot with the merging and the migration of all of these endpoints. And the front end automatic code generation from the AWS command line is now way more predictable on both ends, because it's just, once again, from a single point. Okay, and now improve scalability. So in the event that the daily user base grows and more resources are required in order to serve them, we prepared and made it easy, and we also will document how to handle any number of users with AWS by our Aurora serverless V1 clusters have been upgraded to support a simpler migration with just a few clicks. Before it would require making duplicates and making backups and transitioning and spooling 3 different instances at once, and then making them communicate with each other. I already handled all that, and now all it is just a single click, or I believe it's like 5 almost, just to upgrade to Aurora serverless V2 for even more efficient database duplication and spin up if it's needed. Although Aurora serverless V2 does cost more, that's why we gave the option to just have it ready in case. The Aurora clusters are also more in tandem with AppSync, because now
where scale ups now take less than a second as compared to previously, to 5 minutes. And now for the unutilized resources that we removed, in preparation for like more efficient usage of all of our backend resources, we eliminated unused resources and reduced daily expenses by about 50% from an average of $1.50 to 75 cents. This efficiently gave more headroom for other more important resources like RDS and AppSync that we need to start utilizing more. On the graph here, you can see on the before August 28th, before our big migration, it was about $1.50. And then the spike is due to the migration of services where we had to have copies and do the migration that I mentioned earlier. And then the reduced price was just the changed server work, the incurred costs.
So for the blocks and difficulties, there were many obstacles and challenges that we encountered during this project that we had to overcome. The first being setting up our environments during the summer. Setting up the iOS environment was very easy, but setting up the Android environment was not. And it took a lot of time and effort from Daniel to set it up. And fortunately, he was finally able to get it and set it up for myself and James and Marcus almost immediately. Another issue were the deep and complex backend bugs that we didn't see until later in the project. As we got more accustomed to the project and more familiar with using AWS, we started realizing more and more problems and issues that needed to be figured out as soon as possible because they made things like account creation and other things very, very difficult and buggy. Another issue was limited communication with the old team. We had almost no communication with the prior team and only the comments that they left behind for us to really understand the flow of the app and how everything works. Fortunately, we had Zainab and Pam always helping us and always providing us with resources that we need in order to get us on track and ready to work on anything that we're working on. But by far the biggest challenge was the fact that there were two projects, one for iOS and the other for Android. This divided our team into two. And we had separate bugs on each platform that we needed to solve. And unfortunately, me and James couldn't go to Daniel and Brandon for help because they were familiar with the Swift UI and how everything works on the iOS and not on the Android. And they couldn't come to us for help for the iOS side. And we also had to implement these required features twice. We had to improve the chat feature for both, improve the data visuals for both, implement app analytics for both, due to it being on two different platforms.
All right, and now we'll go ahead and start with an app demonstration. All right, so on the right, we have an emulator running the project on Android and another emulator on the left running the project on iOS. So for now, we'll get started by going through the account creation process as if we were to make a team on the iOS side. So we would click the Get Started part and we would type in a name. We would select like Team Select Seeking Care. And then I'm going to use a temporary email that I have written down here. Okay, put in a phone number. We provide secure password. There's form checking for both matching passwords and all the other cases. Oh, I might have typed in the password wrong. I don't know if I typed it in wrong on the first one. Functionality. I might have typed it in. It's because I'm looking back and forth and it's kind of
Demonstrating that it works.
yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but just a quick reminder, on time. So for the demo, as much as you can speed up, that'd be great.
Oh, okay, for sure. We'll do.
Because we want to give some time for questions. Ooh, the demo gods are not with you.
Well, what time are we at?
45.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a new temp mail.
Yeah, you might want to try a new email.
Yeah, let me go ahead and create a new email. That might have been it. Okay. Provide. Okay, yeah. I think it was because that email was already existing.
Now we just wait for it.
Now, yeah, our email will receive a confirmation code.
So during this wrap up period, like, consider going ahead, 'cause that's going to be a common error possibility, you might consider going ahead and putting in an error message there.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so then we'll go through ahead and safety plan. This is the screen that reassures the user if they're going through something at the moment, just to kind of help them out. There's a timer that kind of, prevents them so that they can read it. And we'll select a few events here. Do like 5. Four here. The behaviors, the events.
How did you decide on the color code for these?
This was from the previous.
And the check-ins here, it kind of just says that it asks the user to state this, that they will log any major life events and do the check-ins daily. And here we can do invite therapists and parents, and we'll get to that once we're actually logged in and everything.
This can also be done from the support network tab for the team view.
Yeah. Okay, here you can type in safe environment plan. I will keep safe. Whoops. How much time do I have? 10 minutes?
Well, we need to leave time for questions, so.
Yep.
wrap up.
All right, I will agree and finish the plan. Now our account has been created. Here we'll get asked into for a check-in reminder. We can change the time. And now we're at the home screen.
Yeah, we'll just go through a check-in and then some of the graphs.
Yeah. So here would be a check-in. So I'm just going to select a few here. I could add a new one as well. Custom. Event. Different icons. Yellow. There it is. I spelled it wrong, but that's okay. Other one for this one. Another one for that one. And notice that we have a new safety plan here. So then it allows us to update our safety plan because everyone's lives are dynamic. And the journal entry. My entry. And here, oh my goodness, I feel okay. All right, then we finish. Now it's going ahead and creating the check-in.
Now, because there was no parent linked to this team's account, there was no option to send a message.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's a new account.
All right. Over on Android, can you show the parent interface?
Yep.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead. On Android, we'll click in. And I already have a parent here with their email.
Yeah, this parent account will be already populated with the team that has,
I believe it has 2 teams. Yeah.
That one's functionality plan as well. Right?
Yeah, that would be exclamation mark.
Yep. We're in. All right.
All right, from this.
Yeah, you can just
All right, from this screen is where the parent can get an overview of all the teams that they have, whether they have one or more. And they can see who was checked in today, who was checked in yesterday, who's checked in this week, who has week at all. And it'll show you, click on it, it'll show you the last time they haven't checked in, they have checked in, you can click it. Once it finishes loading.
Just keep going through. If there
It should be noted, it normally does not take that long to
Yeah.
load.
All right, so here you can see the
Yeah.
here you can see the progress. This is multi-progress. There's a different this isn't where they show the graph screens. The graph screens are shown on the individual progress screens. This is for an overview for all their teams that they have linked to their account.
if the team decides to share it with them.
Yeah, and you can see who has increased or decreased in coping strategies. If no one is decreased or increased, it won't show that box. But if there have been, then it'll show like how it's only showing decreased here. And then if you click on the name, it'll take you to the screen from there. If you go here, yeah, click here. And then you can also do that from the team screen. Did you select James? Here you can see the check-ins that they have done that week, today, yesterday, and this week. And then here you can see the actual progress screens.
These are identical to the team's view.
Yeah,
of
you can
the
see
board.
today he completed a check-in and he listed 8 what are these? Major life events?
Yeah.
And then here you can show the last the thing to change it. If you want to see the last 14 days, you would select here and you scroll down. Now it changes from the last 7 days to the last 14 now. And then you can show the next thing.
So that essentially kind of shows off the graphs, messages.
Okay, any other major components before we throw it up into questions?
Yeah, I think just the chat really. The chat is everything that we're showing is apparent on both ends. But yeah, see the keyboard avoidance.
And I also want to throw in that I like the fact that this is clearly the same app, but it's mostly material design on the Android side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
Proper iOS style on the iOS side.
And for some things, I felt like I tried to make use the React native built-in things to try to make it a better experience rather than trying to replicate iOS 100%, just to make it feel a lot better, rather than using homemade things.
Yeah.
And you show the same
Um,
screen. You were gonna say?
Just a reminder, to also demo the analytics real quick, if possible.
Oh yes, so just really quickly, I have the screen open here. So we created a analytics project on AWS, and here and while it loads and catches our data, this is the overview. So we're going to go over to this selection here and go to events and go to filters, and here we can see all the different types of events like check-in. I'll do a check-in for this one. They have like the timestamp for the check-in, the number of things, the new events count. So we can tie this to a specific name, custom attribute, where you can I'll choose mine.
Just do events because it'll be more complicated.
Events.
Yeah, but event attributes.
Event
attributes. The other one. Yeah.
Which one?
That one.
This one?
Yeah, it'll be more
The
complicated.
count. Okay. Sure. I already put in my email.
So yeah, you can do it for a bunch of users or just one specific one.
Yeah. And yes, I did have when was this? Yes, to Sunday. I was using my account on Sunday and I was just testing the app a bit more. And you can see that there's 7 event metrics here. And it adds the flexibility for all the different types of data, new strategies, and all of this really can be implemented now. And honestly, what made this possible was big part in restructuring the whole backend that we discussed in earlier. Otherwise, this would not have been possible. And I guess we'll go back to the presentation now. All right, and now here are key takeaways. So SafeLINC allows those struggling with anxiety, depression, or suicidal tendencies, a convenient way to develop and adhere to a safety plan. Our application streamlines communication between therapists and their patients and provides easy to interpret visuals of patient status. With SafeLINC, now it's easy to work alongside with your support system and develop a safety plan that works for you. And now daily check-ins help keep teens consistently checked in and with their parents and therapists and helps them de-stress.
If somebody gets the whole volume button, so I know too big.
Yeah, the TV display thank you.
And you just leave it there.
And then we aim to provide some relief to those who are struggling by helping them improve their mental health.
Concludes our presentation.
Thank you
All
all for this.
right, we'll throw it straight to the sponsors and committee for questions.
All right, any questions?
Yeah, I do. So the thing that really concerns me is why you didn't use React Native for both platforms. I would guess the previous team, their biggest stumbling block was trying to maintain two UIs, and you've carried that forward. That puzzles me.
Yeah, so we believe that at some point it would be good to use the native languages for each platform for the performance benefits, because there is a lot of querying and things that are happening that can be pretty unresponsive to the users. So in the scope of performance, we decided to keep Android because we decided to keep React Native because we didn't have the manpower to write another code base completely in Java for Android.
While fixing all the existing bugs and implementing features.
Exactly.
Yeah, some of the items that we had to complete would have fallen out of scope if we took up that huge project of converting it all into one.
Yeah, but the reason that the iOS has its own, it's built on the native code language is primarily because of the performance benefits.
But I mean, it's this map that really, okay, sorry, go on.
Any other question?
Any other questions?
So
Was
my
that
other thing is, what are you doing for the next team that may work on this? Because you said you had issues with carrying forward the work of the previous team because of lack of communication. How are you dealing with that for a next team that will work on this?
So that's why we updated all the documentation to include detailed steps of how to set up that environment. We commented our code as well as different coding guidelines for working on a task. That's why we also have the documents that contains all the testing information and account info.
The way the instructions are now, like any programmer with basic computer skills should be able to follow it step by step. It's not assuming they know how to do anything, like it's very precise.
Good.
Yeah, and
And we
just
also hope they won't ghost us.
She hopes that we don't go stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We have all of our information and links in the GitHub readmes.
So.
yeah, I have a related question. So hindsight's 2020, where it's easier for all of us to look at someone else's work and criticize it when that work was previously done. But looking at your own work now that it's completed, where would you like to see the app go in the future? What are some key limitations of the work? How do you hope that it's changed and advanced beyond what was already noted?
So for one, we will commented any code added in, as well as say if there was a component that we didn't understand how it worked that the previous team wrote. We did our research and our workflow and debugging to figure out how it did work and put our comments in that. Now, as far as the next team understanding whatever we implemented or fixed or added in, basically, I think they should be very, very well off. If they're ever confused about a component, they just look at the code or the comments, sorry. Yeah.
I would also probably add With the addition of analytics, because of the rework that we had for the entire backend, we wish we honestly had like time to kind of get those analytic informations from the console to provide it to, like, let's say like a therapist or a parent. Because I feel like that would be useful to just have, you know, available in the app instead of through the console up. Albeit that's all we were able to provide within our time. We believe that the fact that it's there to begin with is a great starting point.
There's a lot of potential.
There's a lot of potential there. I would say, do you guys have any other like things you would like to see? You know?
I mean, I feel like it should ultimately be merged into one React Native project. Like, I don't think the performance hit will be that hard, because we didn't foresee the difficulties that imposed on us, like having to divide our team. You know, we were more focused on accomplishing the required tasks and making the app feel great on both platforms. But if we would have combined it into one, I think it would have reduced a lot of time spent on different features of the application.
We also didn't want to waste any of the efforts that the previous iOS team or our iOS team did, because we didn't realize like how much more difficult it was to have two code bases, and we didn't realize that it was an option, or didn't think it was an option, because we were handed these two projects. We just were given our jobs and we tried to the best of our abilities. So we didn't think to eliminate the iOS version and only go solely for React Native.
So it seems like a fairly obvious win if there's next version of this project.
Yeah.
would be to go ahead and combine the code bases. Now that you gentlemen have taken a gas powered weed whacker to the backyard, we can fire patches.
Yeah, exactly.
I will mention, if it was one of the main requirements, in place of some other requirements and features, were required to do, then it probably could have been done. However, the performance probably wouldn't be very up to par, because rewriting a whole new code base introduces, God knows how many other errors. So that would be like an own project.
Yeah.
So, all right, more questions, sponsors, committee, anyone?
So I just want to give you guys the chance to, if you could summarize in 3 sentences, the most significant improvements that you've made to the app, what would they be?
Say we made performance a lot smoother, general functionality.
The stability of the app overall for both platforms was very improved. It's not crashing anymore. The back end is cleaned up and a lot easier to understand for the future developers.
Yeah.
And
I'll say that's the biggest thing. I'll say is the rewrite.
And I'd say documentation for setting up and getting started, as well as understanding which the code that they're reading and trying to work on.
Okay, thanks. So I think Zainab wanted to take a picture of everybody in the group and the committee if
Yeah, I did have one question too, though. It's less
yeah.
technical because we did talk about technicals through the 2 semesters. But from your young adult perspectives, if you were to think like a teen, what would you want more from SafeLINC? I guess it's building upon Mary Jane's question, like what more should SafeLINC do in the future?
Maybe it's kind of a stretch, but I think it would be useful to have like a live chat with someone. Almost like, how there's a suicide hotline you can call anytime. It might be nice to have like a live chat with someone, or maybe it could even be like an AI or something.
Yeah, it could be an AI therapist.
Yeah. It's a bit of a stretch, but AWS does offer some of those. What else would be nice?
Like we said before, like something in the settings maybe so that you can see your engagement metrics visually. You can see how long you've spent in the app, how many times you use it that week, things like that.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Thank you.
So you do have time for the group demo, the group photo, fortunately, because there's not a 12 o'clock game. So, before that, let me ask, sponsors, what do you think? Are you happy with what you've gotten here?
So overall, I think this team did a great job making the app more stable. And one of the major requirements that we asked of them this semester was to add the analytics. The area for improvement is I think they should have focused a little bit more on the high level major accomplishments of this team and a little bit less on the deficits of the previous one, especially since this app had won Best in Show in a previous semester. I think it would have been great for them to really just showcase how they move the needle forward. For instance, stating that the previous team made the design decision to have two separate like AWS instances and stating that more like just matter of factly and saying that the improvement that was made that you combined the two, for instance.
Yeah, we try to preface any sort of deficits with, oh, well, we can see why they chose it. I hope it didn't come off like we're like, oh, they made this decision, so now we have to deal with it. But I apologize.
Yeah, we're sorry.
That was
No.
not our intent.
Well, thank you.
That's also, this is Gerber again. Thank you, because that's the I'll say that's the second time in these presentations already that you brought up something that I want to address at the class level in future semesters going forward. We're kind of trying to create a base of what to do and what not to do in your presentations. And one of those things is going to be, nobody wants to hear how bad the last team was.
Anything else?
Matt, could you send us the evaluation forms? I didn't get one yesterday.
Yes, I'm sorry. I owe you those forms. I will be completely open. I was dealing with a minor logistical catastrophe in another class all day yesterday. I will send you those
Yeah.
forms.
No, I understand. If I could catch them today, that would be great.
Absolutely. I will make sure that whether it's from me through the teams to you or from me straight to you, you will get those forms today.
Okay, and help this old man remember what group number Carebit was. Yes.
Carebit is group 4. SafeLINC is group.
Yeah, we're group 8.
Group 8. No, yesterday. This was group 8.
Yeah, Carebit is group 4.
4. Okay, thank you.
Yes. And I only know that because I have it right here in my notebook. I would have already forgotten it if I had.
Well, we appreciate that because it's helpful for our notes.
Very much. Yeah.
So just get all the team together to be able to put them all in the same photo and do our customary thumbs up for the photo.
Can someone stop sharing their screen? Because it's kind of covering my.
Oh, this one.
Okay, so yeah, kill the screen share.
We may want to angle the laptop better as well. Yeah.
Thank you for accommodating our cheesy requests.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
All right.
Already, let me spotlight in here so that they can see that they're up. Who's
And
host?
Zainab,
Should I turn my video off?
no, you can be in it. You were you were part of this.
Okay. I was like, maybe it's just committee members only.
So actually like it's a little okay. So when you make them that big, we all get really small.
Yeah.
Okay, then let me unhit spotlight. Remove spotlight. There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
that works. And you're welcome to get in the picture too, you know.
But you should be able to, all I do, you all are the ones who did this. All I do is sit in the back of the room and nod like I know something.
All right.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Thumbs up. You guys can do thumbs up too.
I'm using my hands, so I won't be. Okay, I think we're good.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll post that to social media and our lab webpage. And so just get with Zainab about the final testing and documentation, and we look forward to wrapping up the semester strong.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great job, you guys.
Congrats, nice job.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Oh,
Thank
and then
you.
also whoever is doing the recording, send that to us once it's
Yes,
processed by Zoom.
yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right,
All right,
thank you.
Have a good day.
I
Thank
know
you.
you'll be sending the code to the sponsors. You'll also get information from me about putting the code on our server, because we're gonna try very hard to make sure everybody does that, because we're trying to eliminate disappearing code issues. We're done. Do you gentlemen need any help with tear down, or are you good?
I think we're good.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
just a suggestion for your note, not the team, for the instructor, is in addition to getting the code base, also get scripts for like recreating the database. That's another thing that some of the teams forget. And then any
Okay.
credentials, like for instance, if they use Firebase to do messaging, or if they had to use like a Fitbit API, that's been the preventative things from one team to the next for us is those level like credentials and stuff like that, not just the code that was checked into GitHub.
Code bases, set up harnesses and scripts.
And then credentials to any accounts for APIs or whatnot.
Yeah.
I think they're
Awesome.
muted.
Well, thanks everybody. Good job, guys.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.